I thought both how to be a social entrepreneur and how to create a successful social enterprise were pretty good TED Talks, some of the more interesting ones I've seen. Both videos were very similar, both in message and explanatory method, but I believe that both are essentially correct. Both speakers define social entrepreneurs and enterprises similarly, and they also both discuss their advice for becoming social entrepreneurs, as well as naming several examples of others who have followed similar methods to great success. Both speakers also talk about their own personal organizations and what they were able to accomplish, and remarkably, both end with an inspirational paraphrase from a semi-public figure. Starting with how to be a social entrepreneur, the speaker starts out mainly with a little bit of his background and by defining a social entrepreneur as someone who tries to solve social problems with entrepreneur skills. Makes sense to me. Not really much to go into there. Then he starts naming many examples of social entrepreneurs, and the first two he named stuck out at me, especially because the next video also mentions them. He talks about Muhammad Yunus, a Nobel Prize winner, who in the late 1970s noticed much economic disparity across the globe, and he came up with the policy of microloans and microlending, which was essentially lending to poor people with no collateral, sorry, and giving just small loans to encourage investment and the start of small businesses. And he primarily gave these to groups of women. And obviously, since he won the Nobel Prize, he was remarkably successful in his social entrepreneurship. Scott Harrison is also named, and the founder of Charity Water, who, as you can probably tell by the title, raised money to build wells around the world so that people could, all around the world, could have access to good drinking water. One of the most impressive aspects of his organization was his ability to market his organization and keep track of all of his data using the internet. And he was, in the end, was able to raise about $40 million to bring water to about 2.5 million people as of the video. As I said, these two were interesting because the next video also brought them up. And he, in How to Be a Social Entrepreneur, mentions several others, which I will not necessarily get into. When he discusses his methods for being a social entrepreneur, he mainly focuses on people that are motivated to make positive social change, and that motivation being the key behind everything, especially because he mentions that it isn't a traditional job. He specifically names, states two questions that have to be thrown out, which is, what do I want to be when I grow up, and what do I want to do when I graduate? I know personally for myself, those are two of the main questions I was asking, but he claims that those have to be thrown out and that your method has to be more problem focused. You have to go out into the world and observe a problem that you want to fix, and you just have to throw yourself at that problem and see how to solve it. I was taken aback at this approach. He mentioned that his first response was going to monster.com and search up jobs for social entrepreneurship, which probably would be something that I would do. But this method does make a lot more sense. It's a lot more focused, a lot more directional. And in the end, it seems like you'd be a lot more motivated to stop a specific problem that you see happening in your world, as opposed to a random job offer that you find on a website. And if you're trying to find and deliver ways of social change, your personal motivation should probably be incredibly strong. He then went to talk about his own organization, the James Gang, and basically a platform that allows other social entrepreneurs to create organizations. And he went through lots of the accomplishments that his organization was able to perform as just a group of college kids who wanted to do better in their community and wanted to help others improve the community as well. And they were able to come together and get a lot of positive social interaction done for their community. He emphasizes one thing that I found interesting, that college is both the best and worst place to find a problem that you want to solve. Worst because the institution tends to define you on the basis of your major and your major only, which I have experienced and is totally true. However, he also says that it's the best place as well because it's a good time to make connections and try new things, which I also admit college is really great for and I have personally experienced, and really would be a great place to form the connections necessary to start social change. And actually, that's part of what's mentioned in How to Create a Successful Social Enterprise, which I'll be discussing next. The speaker for this video was mainly impacted by the foster system, and he wanted to change that. I was completely shocked to learn the statistics he brought up about the foster care system, about how only half of foster kids graduate high school, 3% graduate college, and 66% either die, go to jail, or are homeless by 19. That one blew my mind. I could not process that one for a little bit. And if I had noticed all these systems, especially if I was a foster child myself, as the speaker was, I would probably be very motivated to create a similar organization. Now, the method that this speaker prescribed is what he dubbed the BIB method, which stands for Business, Impact, and Branding. Now, for business, he asks the question, what do you want to do and why? And he advocates, again, choosing a problem and researching it extensively. And again, this is where he discusses Muhammad Yunus and microloaning again. Again, like I said for the first video, I totally understand why this approach is necessary, and I found it very convenient that both people started with their target problem and branched out from there. The second letter, impact, was to measure how much value you create and who for in the community, and it's just to show that your organization has the potential to make the world a better place and have a positive benefit. I believe that's very important to any organization such as that. It should have a real, genuine purpose if you're going to throw that much effort into it. And then the third one, probably one of the biggest ones, brand. Who champions you and are they credible? And these organizations are really important because it's almost impossible to start your own successful social venture without other credible people backing you up. He made statements where these connections can be focused or can originate, based upon both chance and on planning as well. And while the chance certainly helps, the example he brought up for that was being introduced to a city councilor, and that could have been planned as well. So it's comforting to know that many social entrepreneurships or enterprises, can be launched based on connections that you can go out to meet. He also said that he purposefully showed up to several different events and made connections that forwarded his organization. And without those connections, he probably would never have had that organization. And I totally agree, even within the context of college and finding a job or career afterwards, a lot of that is due to the connections you make rather than the degree you earn. And I wouldn't expect that to be any different within the realm of social enterprise. And he then discusses some of the things and remarkable achievements his own organization was able to perform. And then again, he brings up another example of the Sword and Plow, which is a more product-based social enterprise as opposed to his service-based one. And I was surprised to learn of product-based social enterprises. I had assumed that most of them would be service-based, but the example he gave was of Sword and Plow, and that was pretty interesting how they made items from recycled military surplus and donated to veterans causes and hired veterans themselves. That one was pretty interesting. I really enjoyed that example, and not something that I would necessarily have thought of on my own as an example of social enterprise. And then he ended his with a quote from the Dropbox co-founder, giving the example of the happiest and most successful people essentially being dogs frantically chasing tennis balls, and the fact that they are on a mission to chase after and solve a problem, and nothing's going to get in their way. And again, it seems like the motivation is key for social entrepreneurs, and that without that intense personal drive, being a successful social entrepreneur, creating that social enterprise would be impossible.